Hi guys, welcome to the Wargaming Parrot. I'm David, and today we're going to be talking about things you should think about before you get a cockatiel. I'm going to be talking about both the pros and cons of getting a cockatiel. I'd like to apologise in advance if it's a little bit noisier. The boys will be out for pretty much all of this video because I think it's kind of appropriate. And we also have a new rescue conure called Scampy, who may be a bit noisy in the room next door. So, before I get into the cons, I'm going to start with the pros, because I always feel we should start with a positive, or something that Sophie tells me I should do a lot more often. My first pro is going to be in both a pro and con section, and I'll explain a little bit about that a little bit later. So, my first pro is cockatiels are very long-lived. They can last almost 3 decades or longer in some cases. This means that you have a companion for a very long time, and it means that they'll be around causing mischief, flapping around and doing all sorts of naughty stuff for ages, which I think is really, really good. My second is they're absolutely adorable. These little balls of fluff up, look cute, do loads of cute things, act in very silly and unpredictable ways. This makes them very engaging pets and very interesting to interact with. Cockatiels are also exceptionally intelligent birds. Now, some people seem to think that they're not the brightest out of the parrot species, but I'd really like to beg to differ on this. They learn tricks very easily, they can learn behaviours and do all sorts of things. I mean, Chip has learned so many different behaviours and tricks, and they really are exceptionally intelligent parrots. Cockatiels are also very affectionate. Now, because they're a flock species, they like to be with others of their kind, and if there's only a couple of others of their kind, or you're one of their sort of flock mates, they'll be affectionate towards you. They absolutely love getting cuddles, they love getting scritches, and sometimes Fish, especially when he's getting tired, will cuddle right up against my neck and sit there, and it's absolutely adorable. Cockatiels also each full of personality. Every cockatiel is an individual. This means that they may have slightly different. For example, I spoke about cuddles before. Some cockatiels may not like cuddles as much as others, whereas others may absolutely adore them. But this is actually a pro in my mind, because this individual personality makes them very interesting pets to have. These guys are very underrated pets. They're members of the cockatoo family, and some people think they're not even parrots, but they are. They are parrots, and due to this, they have all these lovely sort of behavioural aspects to them. I'm listing this under a pro because, to an extent, it's true. They have a very cheap startup cost. Getting a cockatiel, especially if it's not hand-reared, isn't very expensive, especially if you compare it to something like a macaw or a kaiki, which are much more expensive. Cockatiels are smaller than other parrots. This makes them slightly easier to manage. A cockatiel flapping around isn't going to be as intimidating as a cockatoo or a macaw. This makes them slightly easier to care for and keep than other much larger birds. Cockatiels, especially males, are very vocal little beasts. They can learn to talk to a limited extent. They can also, the males, learn to sing. This makes them very interesting, and you must have seen some of the clips on YouTube and on Instagram of cockatiels learning tunes. Our little guys can sing the Zelda tune and also try to turn on the Alexa, and I think this makes them very engaging, interesting little creatures. So now we've covered the pros, I'd like to move on to the cons of having a cockatiel, because while there's a massive list of pros which I think make them very worthy pets to have and companions, there's also an awful lot of cons you need to be aware of before you get one. My first pro was that cockatiels live a long time. This is also my first con. These guys can live for 3 decades. This means that they are a big commitment. If you take on a cockatiel, you are committing to that bird for a large portion of your life, and you need to be prepared to take on that commitment and look after them. My next con for these little guys is they're exceptionally dusty birds. These guys, as members of the cockatoo family, produce a lot of dust and a lot of dander. If you have something like asthma, it's something to bear in mind. If you feel that this may be an issue, you should also keep this in mind, and it may be essential that you buy an air purifier. We got one, and it does make a world of difference. Cockatiels are also expensive birds. Now, they may have a cheap start-up cost. It may just cost you a little bit of money to get the cockatiel, small bag of food, etc, etc. But these guys are expensive. You need to get them a big cage, you need to get them tons of toys, you need to cover vet bills and be prepared for that. You just, and also, there you go, you can see an example of dander flying there. You also need to be prepared to pay for a lot of food. Now, I've mentioned this in my top tips for new parrot owners, which I'll leave a card for here, but they don't just eat seed. Pet shops just say, just give them some seed and they're sorted. That is not true. These guys should be having fresh vegetables. You can give them pellets as a supplement. You should also be giving them a small bit of seed and herbs, all sorts of different things that these guys can eat and should be eating to give them a healthy, balanced diet. There's a bit of a myth when it comes to small birds that small birds equal small cage. This isn't true. If you get a cockatiel, you need to give them the biggest cage you can. You can't just slap them in something small. These guys need a big cage. I don't know if you can see behind me, this is kind of what the minimum 2 cockatiels should be having. And you need to make sure you have the space for this cage and also the money, because these cages do cost a little bit more. When you get one of these little guys, you need to be prepared to spend time with them. Because they're intelligent, because they have personality, because they're loving creatures, they need interaction, not just from each other, but from you. So you need to be prepared to spend time with them having them out, letting them enjoy themselves, letting them flap around and be with you. So if you can't commit to that time, you need to be thinking about, is this the right pet for me? Because you need to interact with them. You can't just have them sitting out and about. They need to be flying around. You need to be playing with them and doing all sorts of things. So please do consider this aspect before getting one. These guys need so much interaction and stimulation. Leading on from this, your cockatiel needs to be out and about. I talked about having a big cage, which is great, which gives them a nice big environment if you're out at work or at school, but they also need to be out and about as much as possible. They need to be spreading their wings, flapping about. When they're out, there's 2 ways you can approach it. One, just let them be out and about, have things to do like foraging. There's a little stand next to me here where they can forage and sit around, or direct interaction, which I talked about in my previous con. So they just need to be out and about enjoying their time. But when they go home, after they've been out, make sure it's a positive experience, reward them for it, make sure that their cage is a fun and stimulating place to be. So that leads on to my next point, which is because they're very intelligent, they need stimulation. Now, I've talked about stimulation from you, I've talked about stimulation from the cage and foraging and out and about, but they need stimulation from toys and things to allow them to exhibit their natural behaviours. These guys love to bite things, as Chip is doing to my neck right now, the little monster. So you need to get them lots of toys they can play with, they can interact with and enjoy. And this can be a little bit expensive, and it can also be a little bit noisy, but it's well worth doing for them and something you need to do for them. I have a video about the best toys we recommend, and I'll leave a card at this point in this video. So these are just a variety of the toys the boys have. As you can see, it's absolutely loads of them down here. We love getting them. Sophie loves treating the boys. She gets them all sorts of bits, but these guys will go through toys quickly because they're destructive, and that's a good thing. I mean, there are plenty of cheap toys you can get and you can make them yourself, but you need to provide them a wide variety of things to play with. Cockatiels are very social creatures, as I've already mentioned. So if you can get a cockatiel in a pair, it's much better for them, or in a flock if you have an aviary or larger accommodation for them. They do benefit from being together. Now this point, I'm putting it in here because I think it's important, but at the same time, if you get a rescue or if there's only one bird in the pet shop, it's probably better with you than in the pet shop. But if you can, do get them in multiples. Cockatiels are very noisy little beasts. These guys love to mimic the fire alarm. They love to yell at each other. They see a bird outside, their alarm calling. Some people aren't quite prepared for how noisy these little guys can be. They think it's just a little bit of singing and a tiny bit of chirping. It really isn't. They will yell and they will scream. So when you get one, you really have to be prepared for the amount of noise these little guys can make. Something to bear in mind here is if you leave the room and they're very closely bonded to you, they are going to flock call for you. So be prepared for that. Every time you go somewhere in that house, they'll be like, where are you? What are you doing? Similarly, when you come home, they'll be like, what are you doing? Hello, welcome back. Are you prepared for mess? Because if you get a cockatiel, they are going to be very messy. These guys like to poo wherever they want. So, and also they poo every 10 to 15 minutes. So that's a lot of poo if you think about it. While it can be quite easy to clean in a cage, especially if you've got substrate, you can just pick it out. When they're out and about, they may poo on your carpet or furniture. So you need to be prepared for this eventuality. You need to be prepared to clean it all up. We recommend using stuff like F10 because it's completely bird safe, rather than stuff like Dettol, which is not. They also chuck stuff everywhere. As part of their foraging behaviour, they will be nuzzling into the substrate or the bedding you provide, and they'll be throwing it everywhere. Similarly with their food, they may not want to eat the veggies on top, they may want to get that tasty seed, so they'll be digging their beaks into their food bowls and chucking it everywhere. Also, when they have a wash, which they love to do, they love to bath, although Chip not so much, they'll be throwing water everywhere. So you have to bear in mind that these factors, that they are messy creatures. They're not just going to sit there and do nothing and be ultra clean. So this is some of the mess these little guys have created. This is Pickles' mess as well, but I actually hoovered yesterday, and just from having their morning snack and late evening snack, they've already thrown all of this out. So these guys make a lot of mess. You have to be prepared to do a lot of hoovering and sweeping. Cockatiels are parrots, and you know what that means. They're destructive. They love to chew things, they love to bite things, they love to explore their environment. This means they won't just be biting their toys or their snacks, they'll be going around biting and chewing your furniture or your clothing, or as our birds like to do, our socks. So you have to be prepared for this, and they will chew things, and you may not always be able to stop them. So I just wanted to show you some of the damage these little guys have caused up here. They've chewed the paper, they've been chewing the railing, that's a bit they've had a good go at. And this is with us actually preventing them and taking them down when they're doing it. These guys have been at this, and this is something you can expect, there's a little fish there, you can expect to happen in your home. Cockatiels have big personalities, which means just like us, they have moods. They're not just static in their mood. They will have bad days and good days. You need to be prepared for both. They also exhibit hormonal behaviour, which I'll leave a card for, which Sophie explains in one of her videos. Hormonal behaviour means they want to mate, they get very grumpy, or they may be moody. And also when they're molting, just like if you have an itch, you'd get a bit annoyed, they get that all over, which makes them very, very moody. So you need to be prepared for these eventualities, and you need to be prepared to accept that these guys will have their moods and be able to sort of give them their space when they are moody, or know what to do and read their signs. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this video useful when you're considering getting a cockatiel, and you consider all the points on both sides, because I think they're absolutely amazing pets. If you'd like to see more parrot content, especially geared towards cockatiels and conures, please consider subscribing to my channel. It's free, and it'll be great to have you as part of the community. Have a nice day and take care.